Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, it has been a while, Craig, since we've done a theme month. I don't know, we have like a whole bunch of ideas for theme months floating out there. Ideas that our patrons have given us, ideas we've had literally for years. Mm-hmm. But I was out looking at things, research. I don't know, I went down some rabbit hole on IMDb. And I think it was related to one of the actors that we had seen in one of our other movies. And I'd bookmarked this movie called Just Until Dawn that was directed by a guy named Jeff Lieberman. Uh-huh. And earlier on in our podcast, one of the first episodes we did was a movie called Satan's Little Helper.
Oh, yeah.
Which he wrote and directed. And I remembered thinking, I remembered you particularly, well, you recommended it because you really liked it. Uh-huh. We thought it was quirky. We thought it was kind of fun. It was an odd little movie. I got to looking, and this movie, Just Before Dawn from 1981, popped up, directed by and co-written by Jeff Lieberman. And all of the reviews that I had seen online talked about how this is kind of like a hidden gem, kind of an underappreciated slasher from the era of the slashers. And I got interested in it. I thought, well, we should see this. So I acquired the movie. And then I was just looking around and I was like, 1981, wow, that was a year for slashers. And I just looked at a list of slashers from 1981, and not only were there like 4 or 5 movies that I've had in my mind for us to do, but also a bunch of movies we've already done that we really enjoyed. Like, for example, My Bloody Valentine, 1981. Friday the 13th, Part 2, 1981. Evil Speak, The Burning. These are just slasher movies that we've done. Student Bodies, which is a comedy, and Graduation Day. Even a couple that we didn't care for, like Home Sweet Home with the Body by Jake guy.
Oh, yeah.
remember that stupid one?
Yeah.
And Don't Go Into the Woods, which I still maintain to this day is one of the worst, most boring, horrible movies we've ever seen. And then, like, even if you go beyond slashers, there's like Galaxy of Terror. We did Dead and Buried, and we did Cannibal Ferox, which we didn't really like.
No.
And there's a list of them. The Evil Dead, 1981. An American Werewolf in London. The Howling. Wow. Like huge movies. Halloween 2. It just seems like this was almost the crest of an earlier phase of the slasher before it was started to kind of peak around that time. Maybe a couple years later with some of the more Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies. And then about mid to late 80s just kind of dropped off until we got the Scream series in the 90s to sort of revive it in an ironic way. But I thought, why don't we pay tribute to this year, 1981, with a month of movies, because there were at least 4 other films that I also wanted to see. You said okay.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Right? It's just as random as any other decision that we make, right? And you're always game for everything until we actually do it, and then you blame me for it later, which is fair enough. So I listed out about 4 movies that I thought we could do this month, and you said, let's do it. And we talked a little bit more in detail about the movies and things on a special mini-sode that we did for our patrons on the Patreon page. So we're not going to go into all the background and kind of talk about our reminiscences of those movies I listed off, as well as some of the other movies from this era. If you want to access that, please become a patron. Go to patreon.com, subscribe to our page. Anyway, we kicked it off with this movie, Just Before Dawn. It's George Kennedy's in it, right?
I know.
He's such an iconic actor. He was one of the old man in the old wooden head episode of Creepshow 2. He looks about the same, and so I thought, okay, well, this should be really interesting. And the reviews I was reading from people online were all kind of along the same lines. Oh, this is like a must-see for slasher fans from this era, and this is sort of a hidden gem. And I don't really want to show my cards right off the bat, but I thought it was boring as fuck.
It was okay.
I don't know. An hour and a half of this.
Well, first of all, where you find these movies is kind of a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation for me. I don't want to know. I don't want to be implicated in any of that. I just click on the link that you send me. But I think that we ended up watching the longest cut that is available of this movie, which is about an hour 45. I think that the theatrical cut is just 130, and I appreciate seeing director's cuts and whatnot. I don't think that they're always necessary, and I think that this is one of those instances where it's really not necessary. You can tell easily what bits of the movie were restored because the film quality is terrible.
Yeah.
Just really, really bad. And it, in my opinion, didn't really add anything except for maybe a little bit of plot clarity, but that's not really even all that necessary. There are a couple very, very small, unique things about the movie. Other than that, it's a bunch of kids go into the woods and get picked off by a woodland killer. Like that's it. That's all she wrote, folks.
Well, there's a minor twist in there.
That's what I'm saying. There is the minor twist, which is projected 100 miles away,
mm-hmm.
and then there is a kill at the very end that I thought was really awesome. Other than that, it draws a lot of comparisons to The Hills Have Eyes and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre only because it's taking these suburbanite, presumably white folks, and throwing them into an environment that they are unprepared for, and then just, getting them picked off by the locals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very, very simple formula. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. And we've seen decent movies, that did this. And this it's not Don't Go Into the Woods, that's for sure. In fact,
it's not that bad, no.
I would certainly say that when it started out, I was kind of into it because I thought that, especially early on, some of the cinematography was rather inspired and I thought impressive for such a low-budget film. Right off the bat, it shows this pictures of these beautiful mountains. I think it's in Oregon is where it was shot. And there's like some interesting cinematography where the camera takes us in through a hole in the roof of what looks like a cabin, but it ends up being like this church, this very simple church out in the middle, literally in the middle of the woods. And two guys drinking inside there. And one's looking at the other, and they're raising their glass to God, and they're kind of making jokes and all this stuff. And one guy sees somebody looking in that hole as he raises his glass. And then immediately it cuts to these kids driving down the highway in a camper. This is like the setup to so many movies we see.
Yeah, and I will give it credit. There were... The cinematography, like you said, there's some beautiful nature cinematography. I mean, it is a beautiful setting. The mountain setting is very beautiful. And there were some really creepy moments. One of those drunk hunters looking up to the roof and just seeing this big, menacing, weird-looking guy looking down on them, and then it cuts away while he tries to get his friend's attention, and by the time he gets his friend's attention, that guy is gone. Like, that was kind of spooky. Like, I was like, ugh! Who is that freak? And there are a couple of other places in the movie where I found it to be genuinely kind of creepy. And, you say, oh, okay, well, they see this guy and then it cuts away. No, there's like a whole action set piece where the guy who saw the creepy guy in the roof goes outside, like presumably to look around, and their truck mysteriously rolls down the hill, hits a tree, and explodes. And then the guy that's still in the church gets brutally killed. Brutally killed.
Oh, I jumped ahead in my notes.
With a machete through the wiener.
Yeah. And that wasn't bad, actually. You see the machete come out his butt. There's some blood. There's a maniacal laugh. And that dude takes his orange hat and puts it on and stands in the doorway so that his drunk friend, who's quite a ways away, deeper into the woods, can see him. And he kind of runs off. You're right. I think I jumped ahead in my notes there.
I'd never really, I don't know, I've probably seen it before, but I don't know that there was ever as much. Yeah, like through the crotch, out the butt, and of course, in varying releases in varying parts of the world, that was one of the first things that got cut. But I thought, damn, what a terrible way to go, because then you would, not only would that just be a nightmare, like that's the worst, like I'd almost rather take it in the eye than in the wiener. And then you're just gonna have to like slowly bleed to death with a big knife in your wiener. That'd be horrible.
It would be. I don't even know what that would feel like, because that's got to go through bone to get out the back.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh, geez, terrible.
So you're right. So it kind of starts off with a bit of a bang, and the truck explodes when it hits the tree and all that stuff, because cars are supposed to do in movies. And then they're just these five friends driving down a camper down the road. I mean, again, this is it's a typical opening for a slasher film.
Yeah.
And there are these great shots of the road. And by the way, I want this camper. It is big.
Nice.
It's got loads of windows. And that windshield pretty much wraps around the front and the sides. My God, they must have felt like champions riding down through the woods in that thing. It was really, really nice. As a guy who went around in a much shittier camper with his family growing up. But we are introduced to these friends. There's Warren, who's a guy who's drinking and driving down the road.
But he's kind of the hunky one.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of he's kind of established as the Eagle Scout. That's what they keep calling him. He's the one that knows about camping and stuff.
Yeah. And also, he's one of the more successful actors in this production. I mean, he's his name is Greg Henry. He has 178 credits to his name. He's still working today. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy, Jason Bourne.
Oh wow!
Loads of TV, ER and Gilmore Girls and 24, Star Trek Enterprise. Just you name a TV show, I think this guy's been in at least one episode of it. All the way back to Murder, She Wrote. It wasn't the first thing he's done, but it's one of the first things that he did. Everything before that was either a TV movie or a TV series, and there were just about a half a dozen of them. His career exploded after this, and I would say he's one of the strongest actors in here.
He's fine. I mean, they're not given a whole lot to do. I didn't look any of them up because I didn't recognize anybody. I just assumed that they were nobodies. Yeah.
No, actually, quite a few of them have gone on. Well, obviously George Kennedy, who we'll get to in a second.
Right.
But he's the.
I know him, sure.
Yeah, he's the dude who warns them all.
Yeah, he's the local who warns them not to go up there. I mean, it's paint by numbers. I mean, if you were teaching a class on slasher movies, you could use this as an example of the formula. I mean, it just follows it to a T.
Which is charming, I mean, we kind of like that too, when things do sort of follow the formula, and we can talk about it, we can laugh at it, but we also know what to expect.
Yeah, but there are times when we watch these things and we get excited when they meet the local who we know is going to be the one to warn them off.
Because it's usually played up, and,
right.
And it's really suspenseful.
Well, or they go over the top with the camp. It's a very tongue-in-cheek, we know what we're doing kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just played very straightforward, which is totally fair. This is early, as we talked about before, it's not like this is the first slasher, obviously, with Halloween and Friday the 13th and even as we talked about in the minisode, the giallo genre really kind of was a precursor to these things. So it's not like we had never seen these before, but they were new enough that the formula was still kind of fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's so established that we see it in parody, we see it in spoof. We expect it. So I don't know. Had I seen this movie when it first came out, maybe these things wouldn't have stood out to me. I also think that this movie, had it gotten studio backing, it could have potentially done just as well as any of the others. It's not any better or worse necessarily than those early Friday the 13th movies. It just didn't have the same kind of backing and support.
I think that's true to an extent, and apparently Universal was interested in distributing this, but they eventually pulled out. And it did get some distribution at some regional movie theaters across the country and stuff. And apparently the reviews were kind to it, I think. Not overly kind, raving about it, but they initially weren't terribly bad. And I think part of that is owes to the fact that it's played rather sincerely, and it's not really played with heightened suspense. The one thing I will say the movie really has going for it, and it harkens even back to the scene where we're talking about, where they encounter this old man. They hit a deer, or they think they hit a deer, pull over and go back and look for it. They run up on this house where, like you said, the dude from Creepshow, his name is Roy, he's got a white horse, and he's gardening potted plants in his house, and he warns them.
I guess you're looking to find your way out of here.
No, sir, we're doing just fine. We're going up the mountain to do some camping.
Only a fool would do that.
Well, we got 5 of them in here.
But there's no campsite up there, especially with ladies along.
Oh, well, we don't have to worry with a big, strong forest ranger to protect us, do we?
Yeah. Well, I can't let you go
Sir,
up.
Hold on a second. See, the boy here's a land bear, and we're going up to look over the back 40.
That deed don't mean nothing. That mountain can't read.
Well, he's the warning guy. But it's not, like we said, it's not really heightened. He's just sort of matter-of-factly telling them this, and it's kind of like, well, I mean, it's kind of your funeral, and they're kind of like, that's okay, we're going to go anyway. There's no musical cues, there's nothing like that, and I think the whole movie is kind of like this. The music is rather sparse. There isn't a lot of intensity. It almost feels like, in some ways, a documentary crew following these people around the woods.
Kinda.
There's a lot of them hiking and through beautiful environments, under waterfalls, swimming in water, but it's like a good 40 or 45 minutes after that first kill that we really see anything, well, like another kill, or any action, really. Like, actually, I think most of the kills happen in the last 20 or 30 minutes of the movie, really.
It's late, and it takes its time, but,
It really does.
The reason that they're going there is apparently Warren's dad has bought some property on the mountain, and I guess they're just kind of going to scope it out, which they tell Roy, but then he says, okay, well, where are you going to be? So when you don't come back, at least I know where to look for you. And they tell him a place, but it's not where they're really going. Mm-hmm. Which they comment on later. Ultimately, it doesn't really make all that big a difference, but like, oh yeah, I guess that was stupid. We should have told him really where we were going to be. But as they're headed up, after they cross Roy and they're headed up, then they come across the other drunk hunter who is still wandering around the mountain and still drunk and still drinking. And he says that there's a demon after him and it's going to kill him, and he begs them to take him down the mountain, and they very kind of callously leave him there. Like,
yeah,
this guy clearly
needs help in some way.
Right. Maybe he's just drunk, but still needs help. But they just toss a couple sandwiches out the window and keep going. But then, as the hunter looks on and as they drive away, the killer jumps out of the woods onto the back of the camper.
Completely unnoticed by the people inside the camper.
Completely unnoticed because one of the girls, Megan, the brunette of the two girls, the other is Connie. She's the good girl. I mean, like, the second you see her, you know she's the final girl, and she is. And Megan is, the wilder, curly-haired brunette one. But, like, she has just, right before this guy jumps onto the camper, she has just adjusted the rear view mirror to do her makeup. And Warren, who's driving, is like, hey, I need that for driving. And she's like, why? There's no traffic up here. So, like, he can't even see it in the rear view mirror. I mean, there are little kind of clever things going on there. But just seeing this guy kind of crawling around on the back with this huge back window, but none of them noticing. And there's another gag where when they do finally park, one of the other guys, Daniel, who's like the nerdy photographer one, he forgets his sunglasses on the camper and has to go back on to get him. And when he goes back on to get him, you see the killer lower the upper half of his body down to look in the window, but Daniel doesn't see him. There were little moments like that I thought were creepy. But they didn't, like, blow me away. It's not, I was like, ooh, this is so scary. Like, they were just moments of okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it. They were moments of okay. and I mean, part of the problem is, like, well, first of all, I don't mind that there are no musical cues, but it was very definitely missing, and I think it would have added something to the movie if there had been a little bit of that.
I agree with you, but I did kind of appreciate the sound design because there's a lot of nature sound.
That's true.
And there's lots of, the sounds of the forest, which is a lot of like insects and crickets and things. But anytime anybody is about to appear from out of the woods, the insect sounds quiet or go away entirely, which is
smart.
Well, somewhat true to life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very subtle, and I'd be lying if I said I really even noticed. I read about it, but then when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that did happen. In fact, I read about it while I was still watching the movie because I put this off until the very last minute. So I was watching and researching at the same time. So I read that bit of fun fact, and then I was watching. I was like, oh yeah. They did do that.
That's hilarious. Well, while they're walking through, I kind of fell in love with it because it's still early enough in the movie, and there's a little bit of the drama with the guy kind of poking around the trees, and they look around, they see something in the bushes, but it kind of disappears, and it's this dude. But the setting was just gorgeous, and I thought, I want to be on this camping trip. Because they're hiking in just these insane scenes. They're walking on these rocks underneath a waterfall. And then they set up a camp in just this random, beautiful area. It's not like a proper campsite. And build a campfire.
But it definitely looked like somewhere where you could go. Like, when they visit the waterfall, it very much looks like a natural place that has been... Oh God, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Yeah, for people.
Groomed and for people, right. Of course.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't take away from its beauty. It's a very beautiful waterfall, but especially when they're walking down underneath it, it looks very much kind of like a man-made trail there. And when they're walking to their camp, it looks like they're walking on trails. It doesn't look like they're just traipsing through the woods.
It's like a national park or state park type atmosphere. Well, while they're at the camp and they set it up and it's nighttime, Warren and Jonathan run back off to get stuff.
I didn't get that. Like, why didn't they just bring it? Did they go back to the camper?
Yes. I'm pretty sure they went back to the camper.
They went back to get, like, the booze or something, right?
Yeah, well, why didn't they just bring it with them? And it kind of kills, and they do this multiple times, and it just sort of kills. Well, first of all, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the second of all, like, you want to get this impression that they've hiked like all morning or all afternoon out to this place deep in the woods. But if these guys can just run back to the camper and be back in a couple hours, it doesn't feel the same way. And like you said, they just go to get booze and they come back with a couple bottles of wine. And the guy says, this is all we got. Someone broke into the camper and stole the rest of the food. As though it were no big deal.
Right.
I'm like, what? Don't you think you'd be a little more upset?
Well, and the hunter guy already told them that he was being pursued by demons. Like, right. Now, yeah, that sounds crazy, but that on top of somebody breaking into your camper, you're clearly not alone out there.
And they're just like, well, this is all we have because somebody broke into it for some food. Whatever. It provides a reason for them to kind of be spooked and who is it? Why aren't they back yet? Kind of suspense. And then the guys leap out of the bushes, to surprise them. And it's, again, very typical stuff. And then it's morning. So when the movie is called Just Before Dawn, I expected the movie to take place overnight.
Yeah, right.
And the movie actually takes place over, like, multiple nights. So that was the first surprise. And Connie's upset because, she kept seeing things across the night that bothered her, and the talk about the demon. And she was frightened and did nothing, while Melanie, right, actually grabbed a knife and kind of went out to look. And so she's talking with Warren. And I liked this little bit of relationship. This is what I was trying to say earlier, is I felt that there was a bit of realism to this movie.
Yeah.
Like, these are just normal people who are out camping, and their dialogue seemed pretty genuine, and I thought their acting was just fine, and everything was just not as dramatic as it tends to be, which I found, again, it gave it a little bit of a documentary feel. It was a little refreshing, whether it was intentional or not, or however it does have this. I was thinking, well, they're doing a really great job of setting this up for the tension that's going to come, because, whatever killer comes out and starts really stabbing and picking people off, it's going to be in stark contrast, to the reality and everything of this. But, they go hiking some more. They hear the sounds of a woman singing, and they find this young girl who looks like she's got some makeup smeared under her eyes, and she's scared by them, and they call out to her, but she just sort of runs off into the woods. And Warren comments or somebody comments to Warren, like, aren't we still on your dad's property? And he's like, yeah, so what are these people doing out here? And then they go across an awesome rope bridge.
Yeah.
It's one of those where it's like a single rope across, but then two ropes as handrails.
Yeah, right.
And again, like in a better movie that was a little better structured, this would be your moment to sort of set up the danger that they're going to have to later come to. You'd be going across this rope bridge, but it would be a bit of a struggle. It might be a little dangerous. Maybe somebody slips or something's coming loose or whatever. And so that when we revisit the rope bridge later, it's been established that on its own, this rope bridge is treacherous. But, they just go across it. And it's pretty.
It is. I would have been too scared to do it. I saw I think it was French, a foreign horror film that was very much like this, with people hiking in the mountains, and there was a great big it actually wasn't a rope bridge, it was cable, because it was so big, and they were being pursued by like inbred backwoods people. So this reminded me of that. Obviously this came first, but that the rope bridge seemed very treacherous, and I don't know how they filmed that. I kind of just assumed that they just had the actors do it, and
seems like it.
Again, they go over it. I think that Warren and Connie go over it first, and then everybody else kind of goes at the same time, which is dumb because they're throwing each other off balance. And somebody almost falls in, but manages to pull themselves back up. And I guess there's a part later in the movie. There's a part where one of the characters, one of the guys, John, ends up back on that rope bridge, and it ends up getting cut, and he holds on to it, and he tries to climb up. And I read that he did that stunt himself, and it was actually very dangerous because that particular waterfall was notorious for people going over it and falling to their death.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
pretty nuts.
I don't understand the hubris of filmmakers sometimes, and I guess, you got to have balls to, do something interesting to watch, but
I mean, maybe he had a safety harness or something on him that we couldn't see or whatever, but I
hope so. He's
holding onto that bridge when he gets cut, and I mean, there's a very clear shot of him swinging and hitting that rock and slipping down and everything. I mean, I was very impressed with that stunt when that happened, because it was very clear the actor was doing it, and it did not look safe. About along the lines of like The Exorcist 2, which had a bigger budget and more experienced people on it. Right?
I know. That always makes me. I know. I always think of that with her standing at that ledge, which we came to find out was real, and just infuriated both of us because that's so risky. But we know that there's some booted figure following them. They go swimming. The mountain girl is watching them. There is a cool part where John and Megan, who are a couple, are swimming, and she's topless, so you get a little bit of boobies in there. And they're swimming and they're fooling around, and he's messing around with her, like he pretends to drown at some point, which really isn't funny.
No, don't do that, guys. It's not funny at all.
And so when he goes underwater again, she thinks that he's just messing around. And again, we see the camera is on her. It's kind of a wide shot, but it's on her. But we see kind of far in the background the killer wading into the water behind her. And again, I just thought that this was a really creepy shot. I don't know how realistic it is that nobody would have seen him.
Yeah.
But just her being oblivious to it as we can clearly see him approaching. And then she thinks that her boyfriend is messing around with her again as these hands come up and start kind of groping at her. You know, we can see that they're clearly not her boyfriend's hand. They're kind of smeared in dirt. They're really big. They're much larger than her boyfriend's hands are. And then, so these hands are groping at her, and then she turns and sees her boyfriend crawling up onto shore. So she freaks out and gets out. But, you know, they just write it off. Oh, it must have been a fish or something.
You're overreacting and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it's a little unrealistic that this guy managed to make it there and slip into the water without them knowing, and then make it all the way over to her, stay underwater, and then what is he trying to do?
Cop a feel, I think.
He doesn't surface, and she's freaking out for a while, and they're all looking at her.
What is it, honey? Come on, come here. Hey, come on, get it while it's hot. What? No. Hey, no. Wait. Quiet. Calm down.
Look, you're over there! I was in the water and I felt a hand and I saw you on the shore, and so the hand wasn't you.
Oh, no, it was me.
Jonathan, there's someone in that lake and it wasn't you!
Calm down, honey. Come on, let's get some coffee.
She runs out of the water, and like, where did he go? You know, is he a fish? Can he really stay under there that long? You know, it just... I mean, it was a cool set piece, but it really stretched the boundaries of believability to a point where I was like, okay. And by now, also, by the way, we're 45 minutes into the movie now. So we are halfway through. And except for that kill in the beginning, a little bit of creeping around, we haven't really actually seen anything significant happen yet.
Not really. The drunk hunter now stumbles upon Roy's property and tells him about the mountain man, and Roy just kind of takes it with a grain of salt. Okay, well, I guess we better go check on those kids. And then it's nighttime again, and Megan is acting... I don't know. I have in my notes, Megan acting a fool at dinner. she's joking around, dancing, right? And then everybody's dancing, and then somebody shoots their boombox, and these mountain people come out of the woods, and it's a father, a mother, and the girl that they have already seen, she gets a name. Her name's Mary Cat. But the mountain people the dad's like, you need to get off this land before you raise the devil. And like he just says that twice, and then they turn around and leave.
Yeah.
You know, you said something about the title not really making sense, because you would think that this would be, you know, like peril through the night, you know, like leading up until dawn. Well, I guess it went through several different titles because it also went through heavy rewrites. Like initially, these mountain people were supposed to be some sort of like religious sect, and they were all in on it together, and it, you know, like there were these weird like snake handling religious ceremonies that they forced these people to endure and stuff. But I guess that the director just found that to be very distasteful, and
God,
so
that would have been more interesting.
It would have been more
I really
interesting.
would have liked it.
It would have been more interesting, but they just rewrote it and got rid of all of those elements. And so it went through a couple of title changes, too, and they just landed on this one. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but whatever.
Well, I was actually getting, and part of why, like I said, even for the first bit of the movie, I was still kind of into it, even though I thought the pacing was a little slow. It reminded me a lot of Deliverance.
Yeah.
The writer-director actually said inspired him for this movie. And to the point where I think one of the earlier titles of the movie was going to be like Survivance or something like that.
Oh, funny.
Which is hilarious. And it did like have the pacing of Deliverance, because I would say that, and I've both read the book and watched the movie, and the thing that's kind of interesting about Deliverance is that it does have this very natural feel of these people out on this little adventure camping in the woods.
Oh, yeah, it's a fun buddy movie for the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then suddenly it takes a very dark turn when they realize they're in over their heads and they're encroaching upon the mountain people's land, and these guys come out, and then pretty soon they're fighting for their life.
Yeah.
And it's much like this movie, even from that point on, when they're fighting for their life, it's not like it's a constant chase scene. The enemy is unseen for a lot of it. Like they're getting like guns shot at them from places where they can't see. It's quite suspenseful. It really gives you that notion that they are really in over their heads. They have no control over the territory. They're always on the disadvantage and low ground. And they're these set pieces, like interesting things happen. They fall in the water. They're fighting against the current while these guys are shooting at them. And this movie, it felt like it was going for that flavor, but fell very, very short, because there was no, like, except for that kill at the very beginning of the movie, which has nothing to do with these kids. Mm-mm. There isn't that instigating incident for a very long time that suddenly makes them realize, oh my God, like we're in peril.
No, we still haven't even gotten to it. I mean, the next morning, like, Connie wants to leave. She thinks there's something weird going on, but they just blow that off. And then some of the other girl, Megan's makeup has gone missing or something, so John goes to look for it, and he apparently Mary Cat, the mountain girl, stole some of it because she's got like makeup smeared on her face now. But he starts talking to her, and she kisses him and runs off, and he kind of not chases as in like menacing, but like gives chase, follows her.
Yeah, kind of flirty sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a girlfriend. I'm like, what are you doing? Are you gonna bang the mountain girl in the woods and then just like pretend nothing happened? and they get to the rope bridge, and she acts like she sees something that freaks her out and kind of hides in the brush line. And he thinks that she's just scared of the bridge, and he's like, no, come on, it's cool, look, just go across it. And he starts to go across, and as he gets to the end, we see this big killer. It's the same killer we've been seeing the whole time. He's this big guy. He's a fat guy, balding, looks... Yeah, I don't know what
dorky.
The PC word. I don't know what the PC word is to use. Slow, simple. Yeah, right. But he's just kind of standing there menacingly. So John turns around and starts going back the other way. But this is the part where the killer cuts the bridge, and he eventually is able to climb back up the rope, but as he gets up to the top, mind you, this is on the other side, but we see his hands getting to the top, but at the top we see this boot that just pushes him back in, and he falls to his death.
It's a good stunt.
Well, yeah, the stunt is good. It does look good, and it is scary. I'm terrified of heights, and so that kind of thing makes me very nervous. You wouldn't find me anywhere near that bridge in the best of circumstances. Absolutely not. But then Dan finds the old church, and Megan joins him there, and Warren catches a fish. Like, who cares?
Exactly.
And then John's body washes down the river to Warren and Connie, and he's dead. And I think Connie says he was murdered, wasn't he? Like, I don't know.
Like he washed down the river. You don't know.
And Warren's like, nah, he probably just fell off the bridge.
And that's the extent. He makes like a small attempt at CPR, and then they move on.
These people, I know. This isn't unique. Right. This is not unique to this movie, but it just throws me that in movies, these people come across their dead friends and they're like, oh no. And then that's it. Like,
back at the campsite.
Moving on. Oh, God. Dan and Megan are at the church. They're approached by the killer in a gag. Like, Dan doesn't have his glasses on, and he's the only one who sees the killer approaching, and he apparently mistakes this big, fat, bald guy for his young, attractive brother. And so the killer just walks right up to him and stabs Dan in the gut very unceremoniously, and he's dead.
Yeah.
Megan runs into the church where she stumbles upon the dead hunter from the opening scene. And then the big twist is revealed. She sees the killer outside, like messing with Daniel's camera, but then she turns around and he's also standing right in front of her because they're twins.
Yeah.
It's twin killers. And I said earlier that it was totally projected, but then we didn't talk about it at all. As they're riding like through this rural area or whatever, they see these two little twin girls, and one of them says, "I wonder why there's so many twins around here."
I know. Like, were they riding down the road and there were just pairs of twins standing down the road every half mile?
Waving.
It's like seeing dead armadillos by the side of the road in Texas or something like that. Well, dear, there certainly are a lot of twins out there. What? Yeah, and also it's not even a consequential reveal because there's never any moment in this movie where we were like, what? How could the killer have been there and there? You know?
Well, how could he have been on both sides of the rope bridge? But like that could have been anybody on the other side. It was just a boot.
I was confused by the camera work. Yeah, I wasn't sure, if they were actually two.
It could have. Because they show, like, as soon as the one guy cuts the bridge, they show him really quick run off. Like, so I suppose maybe he could have like run
to the other
around.
Side. I mean, that was kind of what I assumed, right? Was, he ran around to the other side, or it's just, kind of dumb filmmaking where now the killer's immediately somewhere where he needs to be, like Jason.
I mean, we know that there's other people out there. It could have just as easily been the dad that we saw before. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Who amongst these mountain people are killers?
Right. And then Warren and Connie go back to the campsite and they're calling for everyone, and they kind of go back to the church and prowl around there. And then the old man pops back out with his rifle and his wife with the little girl watching from inside.
You keep calling her a little girl. I think she's about their age. She's about the
you're
same
probably
age
right.
Yeah.
You're probably right. And and they ask him, "What did you mean by raising the devil?" And the old man says, I don't know nothing about that. I told you to skadoot."
To skadoot. He says that several times.
He says that a lot, and then they just leave again. Like,
and go back to camp and just hang out.
Like, okay, they just kind of walk away from these two. Like, what are we supposed to think about this old man who's always got his rifle with him out there with his daughter and wife? Like, are they supposed to be menacing? Are we supposed to think they're in on it? He doesn't do anything except tell them to skadoot, and then they just gotta walk off. I don't know.
Did you read the Wikipedia page?
I did.
Did you read the plot synopsis? Because there were details in the plot synopsis that were not in the movie.
Oh, no. I didn't read the plot synopsis. I skipped right over. What did they say in there?
It says that, like, in this part, it's revealed that these two twins were born of the dad.
What?
The dad had a wife, and they had these twins, and then also a daughter, and then the twins killed I don't remember, but it was all about inbreeding. It something that was never mentioned really here at all, or maybe the twins were a result. I think that the daughter that we see is supposed to be like her mother is also her sister.
Oh.
None of this happens in the movie. I have no idea where they got this from in the plot synopsis, unless there is another cut of the movie that we didn't see. I don't know, but
a shorter cut of the movie that is not the 15 minutes longer cut that we have that somehow chose to cut out this very important information. And actually, I wouldn't say it's very important. I mean, it would be backstory, but again, it's not like that would be a big revelation because who cares?
Roy right. Well, Roy does eventually, Roy the forest ranger or whatever, shows up and visits the Logan cabin and asks them about the campers, and they're like, we've not seen anybody. And when he walks away, he says something like, keep breeding in the same family for long enough, something's bound to snap. So, like, it's suggested, but we don't get, that kind of detail. But Mary Cat does admit that she knows where the campers are, and she chases him into the woods and offers to take him to the camp. Which, again, Connie and Warren are just hanging out. Like, I mean, I guess they're waiting for Daniel and Melanie.
I guess.
Even though Connie, she's like, they're dead. And he's like, no, they're not dead. They'll show up.
And then forget about our friend who's actually dead.
Who's actually dead. I mean, whatever. Who cares? But then the killer does approach them and shows himself and chases them. No, he goes off first for some reason. He has to go.
And he takes his whistle. And he's like, in case I get lost, you listen for it.
The reason that he leaves is because John had the keys to the camper. So he has to go back to John's body to get the keys to the camper. So they're split up, which
and
is
he
smart.
leaves her there. Yeah, it's like, you just stay here in case anybody comes back. It's important that somebody's here. I'm like, no, it's not. They know where the camp is. They can hang out there and wait for you. Why would you leave this girl by herself?
There's a fucking fire.
But he takes a whistle, and in case he gets lost, she's supposed to listen for it. It becomes a motif in the score at times. I thought this was... Again, it was just kind of showed how this director, I just don't think he's, at least at this time in his career, very good at building suspense and pacing things out and framing stuff. Warren walks up on the banks of the river with his lantern that he has, and it's kind of a day for night scene.
Yeah.
He sweeps the lantern over, and in a really cool shot, like we see as he sweeps the lantern to his left, it illuminates the tree that is just behind him to his left, and... Is it Jonathan? No,
it is. No, Jonathan it is. It's John.
Is leaned up against the tree with his sunglasses on, and I think we can obviously see he's dead.
Well, I mean, that's not where they left him, but this scene would have been a lot scarier and more effective if we didn't already know he was dead.
Exactly.
He's been dead for a long time, and they've already found his body. I mean, I granted, it is a cool shot. Yeah, it's a cool revelation as he moves.
The first time it's a cool shot, but then he does this 2 more times. He sweeps it over again, and we see it again back there, and then he sweeps it to the right again. I'm like, dude, are you going to look around, or are you just standing in one place sweeping the lantern left and right? Then he sweeps it again, and finally he turns around and he sees him. And I'm like, man, that just sucked all of the tension and energy completely out of that scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then I don't know if I missed something, but Connie hears the whistle in the woods, and she thinks it's her boyfriend, but it's not. It's the killer. How did the killer get the whistle?
I don't know. Do he have his own whistle or something?
I don't know. Whatever. He chases her. She climbs a tree like she's, I don't know, running away from a bear. I don't know. She climbs a tree, and he starts hacking at it with his machete. Warren meets up with Roy and Mary Cat in the woods. The killer does chop down her tree.
Which was another kind of impressive stunt because she's got her arms around this tree, and in one shot that whole thing falls down with her on it. And when they hit the ground, she jumps up and runs away from it. I mean, it's the actress. I was like, God, that also looked like a very dangerous stunt.
It did. It was shot kind of from afar, so that easily could have been a stunt person. I don't know if it was, but it could have been.
It could have been.
The killer then is just like tormenting Connie with the whistle. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah, he's like lumbering after her, almost slapping her with his knife every now and then when he gets close. It's not at all menacing.
It's not. No, it's not menacing at all. And then out of nowhere at the last minute, Roy just shoots him dead.
Yeah.
And then Roy tells, he's like, to Warren and Connie, he's like, okay, well, you better get out of here. And then I don't understand this at all. He tells them to leave, and then they're just back at camp.
By themselves.
And she puts on a full face of makeup?
Yeah.
Why?
I know.
What
I was waiting for there to be some significance to this. Like, she crawls out of the tent, and it's kind of behind him, and he stands up, and he says, Connie, are you all right? And he says, oh, it looks like you prettied yourself up. You got your makeup on. And she's like, well, you never know who you might run into up here. And then that's it.
But it makes absolutely no sense. First of all, why are you still there? Get the out of there. Secondly, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But the other twin shows up and stabs Warren non-fatally, and then he lays there like a pussy for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, just looking in horror, clearly able to do something, but does absolutely nothing to...
Meanwhile, Connie jumps on the guy like a freaking spider monkey, and is like pounding on him and fighting him, and he, like, I think is trying to squeeze her to death.
Yeah.
To the extent that, like, blood starts coming out of her mouth. And Warren is just laying there watching, like, doing nothing. He does not seem really disabled at all. Now, granted, he got stabbed a little bit, but it did not seem to be like a fatal blow. Like, he just kind of got cut. But he's just laying there watching. And then she somehow gets turned around, so she's facing him, and she takes her hand and shoves her arm.
She fists his mouth.
Like elbow deep into his mouth, and chokes him to death. And that looked badass.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it did. I mean, I think I read that Jeff Lieberman wanted a kill that he had never seen before. And that's what he came up with, is somebody choking somebody with their arm down their throat. And it did look good. I guess it would do the job if you could actually physically make that happen.
Right.
That might be a little different. But yeah, she chokes him to death. And then... That's the end, right? It goes to some shots of the woods, and
Mary Cat, the forest girl, like, runs out and looks at them, and then turns around and runs away.
Mm-hmm.
And then Warren falls to his knees in front of Connie and weeps. And then it cuts to the credits over the sunrise or sunset, and that's the end. You know, I don't know. As I was watching this, I just kept thinking it's really not that bad. Like, as far as slashers of this era go, it's kind of you know, it's not particularly distinctive in any way, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's kind of the twin twist, I guess. But other than that, it's just a backwoods killer in the woods killing a bunch of white kids. I'm not going to be too hard on it because it's fairly competent when compared to the other ones that we still are talking about 30, 40 years later. So,
yeah.
Well, some of them, but some of them not. I mean...
Oh, yeah, like Friday the 13th or
yeah, I mean,
like
you've said over and over again, I am a fan of the Friday the 13th franchise. I think they're fun movies. I don't think they're particularly good movies.
No, but they're fun. They're more fun than this movie because... At least, you know, if the acting is silly and the plots are the same and it's the same thing over and over again, at least there is suspense. Like, whoever is directing those from episode to episode, if I'm not mistaken, every single one of them does a decent, competent job of building some suspense. And here, like, not only is it really hard for me to feel anything for these people because the killers just come out of nowhere all of a sudden, with no real build-up.
Or motivation.
And when they are on the screen, they just seem like goofy jokey big guys who are just like almost clownish.
Yeah, just randomly killing people for fun. Yeah, it's stupid.
Like, it seems like you could just trip them up, and they'd fall down and not be able to get up of their own accord,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's just silly. And even when they're in pursuit, like we said, when she falls out of the tree and he's going after her, it's almost laughably not menacing at all. And so I think that colors the movie a little bit. I don't know. And maybe, if you're going to go see this, don't see that hour and 48-minute version. Please see like the hour and a half version. There's a reason why almost 20 minutes of it were cut. And maybe that would have helped with the pacing a little bit. But just, I don't know. It just had all these elements in there, but a lot of them didn't make sense. The motivations of the characters popping in and out didn't make sense. I really thought the realism there for a while seemed kind of good until everything kind of goes off the rails when they're not having believable reactions to their friends getting killed and they're just hanging around the woods a little more. So I'm not going to be as kind to it, but I'm certainly not going to say it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And I did think there was some inspired cinematography in here. I did like the setting, and that's about it. Yeah, and stabbing in the wiener.
I wouldn't warn people away from it. If you want to see it, watch it. Whatever, it's fine. But I also wouldn't recommend it. You're really not missing anything.
It's not like a long lost, gem of the slasher era. Like, we've had a few of those that we were pleasantly surprised at. I was hoping this would be one of them, but it's definitely not. But anyway, hopefully in episodes to come, we will get some 3 other films from 1981 that will be a little bit better. Maybe we'll find some hidden gems in there. Stick around and listen. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You can find us online. If you just Google Two Guys and a Chainsaw Podcast, find our website, find our Patreon page and become a patron if you're interested. Find our Twitter page and our Facebook page. Just leave us a comment any one of those places. Let us know what you thought about this one and anything that you would like us to do in the future. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.